What is up, guys? It is Styx here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys another great high-end PvE and especially Onslaught build. This one is going to be a little bit coming from a fashion perspective, but it's also very useful. You'll see why. Now, starting off with the subclass, we are going with the Broodweaver Strand Warlock subclass. The super is the standard Needle Storm. Then for the Rift, we are going with the Healing Rift, as we are going to be holding the ADU, and in PvE, Healing Rift just tends to be better. We will be pairing this with the Burst Glide for the best boost of speed movement-wise, and the only melee, but also a very important part of this build, is the Arcane Needle, which you will shoot this, you get 3 charges of this melee, and when you hit a target, it unravels them, and you can chain up to 2 additional attacks into this sort of long animation where you will be able to shoot out all 3 melees rather quickly. We will follow that up with the Shackle Grenade. Now, typically when you throw this Shackle Grenade, it suspends targets around it and creates suspending projectiles, but that's not how we're going to be using it. We are going to instead be using it with Mind Spun Invocation. This enhances all 3 of our grenades to have a different functionality than the original, which for the Shackle Grenade, whenever we consume it, it allows us to activate Weaver's Trance. Final blows while this trance is active creates a suspending detonation. For those who are a bit confused by the wording, Weaver's Trance is what allows your final blows to create that suspending detonation, and it basically just gives you a lot of AoE suspend, which is both really good for stunning unstoppable champions and for just generally dealing a good amount of damage without incurring a lot of risk to yourself. We're going to be pairing this with the Wanderer aspect, which tangles that we throw will attach to targets and detonate into a suspending burst, even more suspend, and destroying a tangle in case it's too far away from you creates another suspending burst. In addition to that, all of the kills that your threadlings will get, regardless of their source, will create a tangle. This could include something like the Tusk of the Boar grenade launcher or the Cataphract grenade launcher, both of those being really powerful PvE options right now. And all of those that can create those threadlings with the hatchling perk and etc. will be able to make you spawn a lot more tangles than you might think. The fragments we are going to be using to make this build even more potent is Thread of Generation to generate more grenade energy by dealing damage, in exchange for a little bit of discipline, but it comes out being very worth it. Thread of Evolution, so that all of our threadlings will travel further and deal additional damage, plus getting a little bit of an intellect boost. Thread of Warding, so that whenever you pick up an Orb of Power, which is going to be very common with this setup, we're going to be built to make a lot of orbs very frequently. This will grant us Woven Mail in exchange for a little bit of our resilience, which is fine. This is going to have synergy with everything we do in this build, which is Thread of Finality. Finisher final blows create threadlings. In addition to this, you get a +10 recovery. The +10 recovery is nice on its own, but we are going to want to finish as many combatants as possible, because doing so will create stronger threadlings that travel farther, they deal additional damage. I think it's up to 27,000, 30,000-ish, and then those threadlings, when they get kills, will create tangles that you can use to suspend targets. It's going to just create utter mayhem. In addition to that, we are going to be pairing this finisher setup with, onto the next subject of the build, our exotic armor piece. This is going to be Fellwinter's Helm. Fellwinter's Helm has the exotic perk Warlord's End. Powered melee final blows create a burst of energy that weakens nearby targets. This entirely is a great option on its own for Strand. As you get 3 melees, you can proc this pretty frequently if you choose a weakened target. But in addition to this, all finishers and final blows against more powerful targets increase the radius of the burst and the length of the weakening effect. This is very useful to run with this setup. In addition to this, we will be running some mods and other bits of our armor that will make it better and better. Speaking of which, the mods we will want to run, starting with the helmet, are Special Ammo Finder paired with Special Ammo Scout, and Harmonic Siphon. You can replace this with Void Siphon if you are intending on swinging towards specific weapons in this setup, but that is up to your individual discretion. On the gauntlets, we are going to run double heavy-handed. We are intending on creating a lot of orbs by getting a lot of kills with our melee. As such, this is how it's going to work for us. For the chest piece, I found the most personal success with 2 arc resistances. There's a lot of arc damage all throughout everything from Fallen to Hive to all the sorts, and then 1 solar resistance. If you're finding yourself getting super screwed over by like ogres and stuff, you can replace the solar resistance or one of the arc resistances with void, but I've not really found a lot of need to do it. Now on the boots, I recommend running 2 weapon surge mods based around the weapons you're going to be using. I'm going to recommend void or strand, but I would lean towards void because that's going to help you a lot more with more of the boss killing stuff from my build. And then the class item, which has all of the most important goodies for this setup. First off, time dilation. Decaying armor charge for our void weapon surge is going to be longer. Instead of a 10-second duration, it'll be a 15-second. That means if you have 3 stacks of armor charge, that is 45 seconds. And that's if you don't get any extra orbs during that time. This will be followed by proximity ward. This will save your life. Maybe you can get away without having it in normal Onslaught, but in Legend Onslaught, this is a requirement. Proximity ward gives you an extremely strong overshield while you are in your finisher. Now, enemies tend not to target you when you're in your finisher, but that's not going to save you from an exploding screed. It's not going to save you from an exploding shank. It's not going to save you from a cursed thrall. You are going to get blown up by those kinds of enemies because they will react based on how close you are to them. So if they run past you, they're going to blow up and kill you, especially in Legend and especially in those 40 to 50 waves of Legend, which are a lot of people's wall and they just can't get past it because at that point, you're at a higher power level than even a Grandmaster. And then finally, another amazing thing for these finishers, whenever you collect an orb of power with Healthy Finisher, you get a stack of temporary armor charge. But with this armor mod here, Healthy Finisher, your finishers will heal you, consuming 1 stack of your armor charge, which, with how long they last and how much you're going to be picking up orbs, this is going to make it so that you are constantly going to have the armor charge so that you will heal after every finisher. Now onto the artifact mods. I'm going to recommend a couple of really standard things here. First of all, blast radius is a highly recommend. I'm going to be using double grenade launchers with the setup. Multi-kills with grenade launchers will give you armor charge with blast radius. In addition to this, the 2 next required setups are going to be unraveling orbs. Picking up an orb of power will grant all of your strand weapons unraveling rounds. And horde shuttle. Damaging unraveled targets, which synergizes with these unraveling orbs, will occasionally spawn a threadling. Very useful, especially against higher health targets. A nice one to throw in there is Wished into Being. While your super is nearly fully charged, ability Final Blows spawn orbs of power. Just nice in general, especially with all those melee kills you're going to be getting. And overall, that is pretty much all of what you're going to get out of the use of seasonal artifacts, unless you make substantial changes to the weapons you use in the build, in which case, change them at your own discretion. Now, weapons-wise, very important with this setup. Maybe not as important as the whole finisher spam idea, but weapons are always important. I'm going to recommend, if you want to accentuate the strengths of this build, I'm going to highly recommend during the ad clear waves, you run Tusk of the Boar. My role is Slice and Hatchling. I would argue that in this setup, we get unraveling rounds from so many other things. This also adds in Sever, so you're just stacking those strand debuffs. But if you aren't really too keen on that, you don't like the debuff spam, Envious Assassin Hatchling would probably be better for you because it lets you spam it a lot. But Hatchling is what we're going for on this Tusk of the Boar. I'm also running this with a Recluse. Realistically, there isn't a whole lot of reason to be running Void here, aside from the fact that it synergizes with potential heavy weapons you can use. So I would say you can replace this with any ad clear weapon you would want, as long as it's a primary and it fits with whatever you're running with the build. And then for the heavy, I'm going to highly recommend for the ad clear sections, you run some Hatchling, Demolitionist, Cataphract. Now, are there better roles for this? Probably. This is the one that I have. It's not amazing, but it is very, very useful because I'm going to constantly be using it to create hatchlings, etc. And when I need to, I can do a pretty decent portion of boss damage, but a lot of the damage does come from the threadlings. Now, if you are wanting to only focus on the damage aspect, something I do at times is I put on an Edge Transit. You can get that right now in Onslaught, this activity, with Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. Very strong perk combo. Envious Assassin makes it so you can hold up to 12 rounds in the magazine. Bait and Switch makes it so that when you deal damage with your Tusk of the Boar and your Recluse, you will get a massive damage buff to your Edge Transit. Even with the 12 shots you have in the magazine whipping it out like that, you're going to get through all 12 of them before Bait and Switch ends, and you might have some time to get a couple more shots off after the reload. So I highly recommend using it. Now, if you are running this sort of setup, like I said, you're gonna look for that Void Weapon Surge and you're gonna look for that Siphon. Now, I'm running Strand Siphon here because I am personally just preferring those AoE kills with Tusk of the Boar. I could 100% see you using Void, as I had said earlier. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the build, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and rate the drip. Peace.